So Jung had this cousin that he was studying, and this cousin had these personalities that would constantly manifest, and it's very similar to this movie. These characters,
Split character,
yeah, Kevin's personalities manifest to cover certain things. It's not obvious exactly what they're covering, but you could say that the personalities that manifest are in some ways archetypes, where there is an old man who is very paternalistic because maybe her father was abusive to her earlier in her youth, and she was going from adolescence to adulthood, which is usually when these sort of things begin to pop out and the personalities begin to manifest. But
like Hedwig. I'm sorry.
Right, exactly.
He like anytime something that comes up that would mean something to him emotionally, he reduces to a childlike state in order to deal with it. Right.
And then there is the mother, who's one of the horde. I forget what her name is. What's her name? The female persona. Very balanced. Very
same with the other guy who's in charge of the way with the keys and everything. He's taking care of all the details, doing the kidnapping and stuff. He's just like he's very businesslike and getting things done. But
and she's the opposite of his mother. She is extremely in control of her emotions, and she makes sandwiches and she cuts the sandwiches perfectly, and she doesn't get upset or angry or yell because something is wrong. She doesn't have any sort of OCDs. So
interesting.
That is a compensation of a sort, right? And every manifestation, every new persona that comes out or pops out in the sort of dissociative complex is covering for one part of these sort of
inadequacy,
gurgling undercurrents that are popping out in this process of transitioning from adolescence to adulthood. And over time, each persona in Jung's cousin would get boring. In other words, it would be very interesting, and it would be, speaking in high German at some point.
Boring to her?
No, start babbling incoherently after a couple of months would just sort of fade away, and then a new one would pop up. And so there's this process of there's a new one, it exists because it is covering something that is cropped up in the subconscious, and then it begins to fade into meaninglessness, and then another one pops up to cover something else. So in Kevin, the same thing is kind of happening, except he's able to move between them, and there's this idea of the light that they each grab. But his earlier personas, that was a phase for him where these are coming up to maybe cover the trauma that he's trying to escape from, which is exactly what happened with Jung's cousin. And then finally you have the over-personality that develops, which is part of this horde, which is sort of the final and perfected personality. Whatever you can say about that is a dark personality, but it is the final one. It's the last one that needs to be.
Was it dark in Jung's cousin as well?
No, it wasn't. It was just a progression of personalities that developed, and they existed simultaneously for a period of time, and then slowly they faded away as she matured and began to have social
Is that usually the
obligations.
case with this condition, or do some people just persist with their...
I think some people do persist, and it becomes a coping mechanism for well into adulthood, and it doesn't go away. But Jung had, at different traumatic times, Jung also had the disorder, in a way.
Really?
Yeah. To a smaller degree, but he developed ways to deal with it, where he would he found that if he recognized the personalities in himself, he had what he called personality 1 and personality 2. Personality 2 represented his shadow, and then later he had a personality was the anima, which was a female that lived inside of him that asked him questions that he integrated. He decided that he would go through this process of integrating these, acknowledging them, and this mostly happened through artistic reflection. So he would build little castles out of rocks and just play around in the sand and paint pictures and draw little sketches and just try to understand himself and not try to make any judgments about his characteristics. This is something you can find in his biography or his biography, semi-autobiography.
What are those collected works? It was like the Red Book or something?
Yeah, the Red Book is for his
transition.
Yeah, the Red Book.
Okay.
That's his transition period into enlighten Jung, if that's the thing. If it's sort of the
well, things were still messy, though. It wasn't like he didn't arrive at any conclusions,
right.
or he was
it is a
still
very
working
important
it out.
Sort of. I haven't read books, so I can't say, but it's sort of a transition moment for him to completely. He went from that to then develop his full theory of the collective unconscious, archetypes, main personality types, and all of his later theories that became well known. It was sort of like this process of self-reflection, partly apparently due to his break with Freud, which was traumatic. Break up, because there was something sexual in their relationship, not overtly, but apparently.
Two pillars of thought.
So
psychiatric thought.
So for him, for Kevin, as Kevin realizes that one personality is not able to cover the gaping hole, whatever that gaping hole is, a new personality creates itself in order to get ahead of it. But the gaping hole is constantly spreading and widening. And so he has to get a bigger one, the next one, the next one, the next one, to cover the ever-widening gaping hole. And for Jung, it was more of, this is a new thing that's coming out. Well, let's try to understand it and then go through this process of self-reflection and sort of creative playing around that helps him, various techniques that helps him understand himself better and integrate those into himself, which I think is interesting, because if you think about it, every person has multiple personality disorder, but for us, it's in a linear way. We don't develop it at one time. We don't develop it in a short span so that they overlap.
Having different personalities for just getting along in life, how you have to talk towards different or act towards different people?
Well, no, I think that... No, I don't know about that, but I think that we definitely do change over our lives, at least. And so if you were to crunch a person down to a single person in time, each of the persons that person is would be different, and they would have multiple personalities floating around, but ours are stretched out in a linear way throughout our lifetimes, right? So we do the same kind of thing. It's still the same mechanism of coping with or adjusting to changing circumstances in life. We adjust who we are as a sort of natural process of the circumstances we encounter in life, but it's just happening much more slowly and not in a way that causes damage necessarily.
Right. And even throughout the course of our whole life, it wouldn't be so extreme as to be like unrecognizable